Welcome to the third of Berlage Keynotes, which are ongoing lectures to manage comment archives.
I don't hear you.
Organized by the Berlage, it is part of the faculty's public programs and institute that we intend to be on. We've invited as much questions geographic and cultural and political context that would be information needs. It's a pleasure to have Sophie Delhay question towards the last week. Dating in Paris, teaching about broad streets tonight, landscape, and college. Geology is the intuition of the project. That necessity around
Hello, I can't hear you, so. It's better than now. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? It's okay?
Yes.
Perfect. With the microphone, I couldn't understand, but now it's okay. So good evening to all, and thank you for seeing me today. And thank you, Salomon, for your invitation. I'm really very happy and proud to be with you and the students. But uncomfortably, tonight we are very busy in my office for work, because tonight we are finishing a project for a competition. So I'm here in Paris with you, and that is my team. That is the other side of the red curtain that you see here, in fact, because everybody's is busy in this side. So I will present myself. So I'm an architect in Paris, and I've been working for 10 years, especially of the issue of the collective housing and social collective housing, because for me it's a commitment. What interesting me in this field is that it's the field that our cultural discipline can meet the needs of the people and the society. So housing is the raw material of the city, and produced is a urban form. But however, the dwelling is the smallest element in the city, and from it, everybody builds himself intimately, daily, deeply, and everybody can build its relationship with the world. So I'm totally convinced that if we free housing from the standards, and if we act on the small scale, if everyone had the possibility of living more freely or composing their links to others in a richer way, then the way we use the world, the way we use the city can be turned upside down, and the way we can imagine the city could change. So in fact, housing takes place. It's about, I don't know, about 80% of the city, and housing takes also a time, because we spend a majority of our intimate life there. So to think about the housing is to look at the society and the city from the inside. And we have to experience it. And at the end, that's what interests me, because in fact, it changes the way that we can think architecture. So to talk about this domestic city, probably I will first of all talk about the inhabitants, and I'm going to talk about housing in a world that is also increases, a world that is changing, where we as architects and you as students must concern ourselves with new forms of density, of solidarity, of comfort, of intimacy, for example. And so what you see here is two major changes. First, we are more and more on Earth, and to preserve the land, the density is a sort of a natural obligation, a sort of new condition. So we could ask this question: how can we live together densely in this earth? How can density become a sort of opportunity for new communities, for neighbors communities, of course, but also communities within the house, at all scales, in fact. And secondly, what you see is that the society is becoming atomized or individualist. So you can see how we are moving away from what you might call in the 60s the conventional households compositions with the fathers, the mother, and the children, to little unities. And we could say it's a sort of pity, but in fact, I think that new solidarities, new sort of links or other agglomerations are forming quite freely. And for me, it's in fact, it's a good news. You know, for example, today couples come and go and create new forms of home. It's less hierarchical and more complex, which with each other's children, for example, each living independently. And the generation are multiplied from 3 to 5, so we can live together in different spectrums between students, older people, and between generations. And the teleworking and digital tools are also bringing the public sphere in the private one. And I can, for example, make this public lecture in my office. So everything is upset, and I think it's a chance for architects, because it allows us to imagine things more freely and to introduce a sort of unexpected into the decisive act of architecture. So, sorry. So for us, this is a sort of very nice drawing, because we don't know if it's a dwelling or it's a house or it's a city. We don't know. So what is interesting is the way the people can live in the house, outside the house, but be linked by sort of relations. And you see there is a dog, there is a deaf person, there is a tree. So everything is more complex than before. So this is a great way to think the house for me. So in my office, we've got, each project is a sort of new experience to enrich our vision of housing. and in fact, in our vision of architecture and society. And year after year, I realized that strong links were being woven between the projects and that 5 topics were emerging. And we've called them sharing, evolutivity, protocol, patterns, and interpretation. And what you see here is a sort of a battle naval, and these topics across the projects. And you can see here that some projects has won the game. So, you know, I think that in one hand, architects are a bit obsessed because whatever the project, in fact, their projects always revolved around the same topics. And in the other hand, we are also opportunist people because each new project is so an opportunity to deepen these topics through a new point of view, a new site, a new program, a new client, etc. So we've published this book that presents the projects in the one hand and the topics in the other one, and with cross-references from one side to the other. So today I will present the work through the prism of the researches, the topics, this transversal one, and I'm going to illustrate them by the projects. So first I will talk about the protocols. Protocols are, in fact, the sort of big decisions that we make during the design, and they are a decisive act that we take and that override all the other decisions that we have to take when we do the project. And these decisions are, in fact, never in response to a demand that is in the program. They result from our criticism of it. So we use the project to solve other questions that we have. And we always try to be as generous as possible in the service of life and environment for this diagonal, for example. And it has consequences for all the parts of the project, and we have to assume all the consequences. And it always talks about quality brought to the habitat, like these duplex that are distributed obliquely, for example, or this project that is a kind of yarrow of different ways of life. And here, dwelling that is broken down into equal rooms. So this is a project that will illustrate this topic. Yep. I'm here. Sorry. Yes. Is it okay? Yeah. So this is a project of 40 social housing units in Dijon. It's in the east of France. And in fact, it's not a project of 40 dwellings, but a project of 240 rooms, equal rooms. And we've done a sort of atomization of the program, and it was a sort of strategy to never use the words housing or dwelling during our discussions with the client. We get him into his out of his reflexes that prevent the experimentation. So we work to discuss with him through only 2 scales: the room of the dwelling, with the questions we can discuss about the question of intimacy. So that is what you see here, and the urban room with the question of the city. I will show you after. So the room has become a sort of tool to dialogue with our client and to work. So that why it's because I'm convinced that if we change the tools, we are changing the scales of reflection. For example, about here we are talking about rooms and not about dwellings. So changing the tools means changing the forms that we produced, and it's a way to experiment, to change the things. So here what you see is, except for the kitchen and the bathroom, which are fixed half room, each room is unprogrammed. So one of them is outside. Do you see my point? Yes. So one of them is outside. It's a loggia or a terrace. And the dwelling is a sort of collection of identical rooms, and the inhabitants settles as they want. So these rooms are connected or disconnected by large sliding rooms, which allow the creation of double rooms for the living room, for example. In fact, this system allows everyone to choose freely whether to be alone or together. So here is the exterior room. Here it's a loggia, and what you see here is a kitchen that got its window to pack the plates, for example, and what you see here is a terrace. And you see, if you use two rooms for the bedroom for the same apartment, you can have those three solutions, and it can free up different views through the apartment, across the room, or diagonally, or around the exterior room, for example. And this is the three perspective through the space. So it's also possible to live differently, of course, with shared flats or co-working, and sometimes one of the room can also have his own access to work. For example, I can have a sort of dwelling and a place to work, and I've got two doors for it. It can be a co-living with three beds, or a co-working, for example, here. So this can be for a family with children and parents, but it can be other sort of households, in fact. And this is sort of, I don't see the, yeah, sorry. They are all arranged in a repetitive structure, and it's not such a repetitive project because each room has its own quality. For example, its solar orientation, its views, or its relation to the other rooms. And to vary the pleasures, we've created two types of windows. These are inhabited windows where everyone can extract themselves from their homes and connect directly with the outside world. And so here you see that the storage units are placed around the windows, and this forms a kind of hiding place. So here intimacy is not at the back of the house, but in a cave, but projected in the front, just near to the city or to the garden. So on the garden side, it's a bench where we can dream. And we design the facade from the inside and not from the outside. And on the street side, it's a sort of alcove with a curtain that allows me to extract myself completely. I can enter in this space and close the curtain and be alone, me in the streets and from home. It's a kind of a strong relationship between oneself and the world. It's the exterior room. So here is the building. It's a kind of a big step because it's situated between small houses and future high building in the other side. So what is nice with this sort of big step is that the building integrates in a unique envelope individual, groups, and collective access. It's to live differently but together in the same form. So here are the 120 windows in the garden side. And here the 121 on the future street. And here are the shared spaces and the treetops. Oh, sorry, in the treetops. We've reserved 10 rooms for the collective space where there is a little kitchen for the neighbors. So sharing. The second one is sharings. For each project, we seek to use density for its ability to bring people together and look for ways in which they can share their common territory. So we want to make sure that the building is not just a multiplication of dwellings, and it's important to protect intimacy of each person, but for me, on the condition that it allows an opening to the others. So we therefore seek to enrich the possible links between the inhabitants and to multiply the possible forms of community without ever making them compulsory. It's very important. So we make things possible because there is a space for it, but it's not compulsory. So we try to do projects where private and common spaces are disconnected. And we try to make sure that the shared space is not distributed, what is something particular. So here are some beguinage. And now this is the project I will show you about this topic. So it's a project in Lille, 55 dwellings with a common panorama. I'm sorry, but this. And for example, in this project, we decided to build higher than requested to free up a large garden in the plot. And for urban reasons, it seemed important to us to go as high as the neighboring public building that is here. But in this area, no one lives higher than the second floor. You see, the little houses. So our building was therefore going to have a great privilege to rise into the sky and to discover a new panorama. So for housing, it's a great privilege. So here is the garden. So we tried to offer the discovery of the territory to each inhabitant, and we want to ensure that this privilege is shared. And the project demonstrates the idea that living is not limited to the housing envelope. And by raising the building higher than planned, we had, in fact, at the end, we had 6 extra units. So instead of taking out the whole floor, we decided to out 1 unit per floor, give each corridor a large outdoor space open to the city. And we tried to connect them, like you see here, to connect the garden to the larger panoramic terrace on the top. And it connects all the inhabitants to discover the city in different ways. So we equipped these spaces with sockets, with toilets, with storage, and it's a real open air facility, in fact. And today this space has been invested by the inhabitants who have created a neighbor association, and they are drawing exhibition, open air film screening, book sharing, and common meals, of course. So I just show you a short walk from the garden to the terrace. Here is the garden with the first floor. You can go up and discover new views on the city, and the relationship between the dwellings and the panorama, and at the end of the course, the view from the terrace on the city. So everybody can project his vision in a larger scale from his home. So the third one is the question of the evolutivity, the third topic. So as I said in the beginning, we believe that to be sustainable, housing must be able to change when life changes and to adapt to each household's lifestyle. So what you see here are some studies of modular housing, which allow people to live in very different way in the same plan, like this too. So I will illustrate the evolutivity topic with the project of 32 dwellings in Dijon too. It's an evolution. Also, the evolution also concerns the city's capacity to evolve over time, because I think that it's therefore a question of making architecture capable of evolving with the changes of the society. And in our case, in Dijon, the town planner wanted that each architect reserve in a corner on the plot to build another building later to make it denser. So the neighborhood could become even denser later on. But for us, it was absolutely impossible to make it in our case, because our plot was too small and triangular, so it was impossible. So we made a sort of proposal, not on the scale of the plot. We didn't reserve a space on the plot, but on the scale of the housing. We proposed 32 voids that could be filled in the future. So rather than having a kind of ghost of a building in the garden, we preferred to give to each dwelling a sort of high quality, but right now, in fact. And each dwelling has a sort of a double high, you see it in section, that allow for a mezzanine, for example, for extended dwelling, or the floors to multiply the dwellings, for example. So this is a building that is able to densify within its own walls. So this principle led to a project of double high that are composed in staggered. So you can, that this principle is sort of luxury in the budget, because it didn't include this sort of luxury before. So everything is very, very raw. Every material is used for what it is. And so the project is in its simplest expression. And when I visited the dwellings, I felt like as if I was in a hall or in a gym. And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure that this double high will be built, because it's so generous space. And in fact, I think we've won a sort of battle, this spatial quality given to each inhabitant at the beginning of the project. So the fourth one is patterns. So in some projects, we work on wavings, kind of lace. And in fact, we try to interweave to combine the small dimensions of the program to make something bigger. We also tried to make this connection and disconnection between neighbors. We tried to protect the intimacy, of course, and at the same time to propose a principle of continuity. And this pattern intertwine intimate, shared, and public spaces, and interior and exterior spaces. So for me, the pattern is a question of geometry, a question of composition, of plan. It's a way of answering that a small principle unfolds as strongly as possible in the project, because the pattern is a way of relating individual elements in a sort of collective construction. So geometry is one of the architect's first tools, and in housing, the composition of the plan is decisive. So we try to take the combinational exercise as far as possible. So with these patterns, we create environments and metabolisms like living organisms intimately linked to the environment in which they act. And this is this pattern I will show you, and this one too. So here is the context. It's a project of 100 housing in Lille too. It's a sort of a flat apartment building. And here I'm going to show you just one detail of the project, not all the projects. It's a project where we decided to work on the question of the kitchens, which are connected around shared spaces. I think that kitchens are a favorable program simply because the kitchen is the space of the conviviality at home, but also with the neighbors. So here we want to create a sort of medina, a small, extremely lively world within the plot. So the dwellings are patio dwellings with living rooms and kitchen that are connected onto two gardens. The living rooms are on the intimate gardens and the kitchen are in the shared garden, the garden side. So everyone is connected by the kitchen. So it's what you see here. So this shared kitchen garden connects neighbors that who don't live in the same alley, because the two ones here are coming home by this way and the two ones here are coming by this way. So this kitchen garden connects neighbors who do not live together, and therefore they create links between the neighbors in addition to the links that is made by the public space. So what you see here, that none of the bedroom can look on the common garden, so that is that it can be used for parties, for example, so they will have no problem. So this is another project that is 55 dwellings in Nantes. And in fact, this project is my first project. We proposed a sort of a flat collective too, and where everyone would have an individual garden and could live like in a house. But in this project, with 100 dwellings per hectare, it's comparable to a block of flats with a collective garden. So this is a very dense operation. So what you see is that the site is between pavilion houses and the public park here. And we divided the site into equal strips with an alternation between constructions and gardens. So in red and blue, you see the 55 houses, and our density in this project, you can see it, is comparable to the collective one. it's the same. Here you can see a 55 house. It's not the same density. So our density in pink, what is in pink, is possible because what is special is in this project is that the garden is not what separates us from each other, but rather in this project, the garden is a sort of connector, and it's what makes the density of the operation. So the dwellings are a collection of identical rooms, deprogrammed, the same, and one of them, what is very strange here, is that one of them is detached and placed in the other side of the garden without connection. So here you don't live in one building, but mainly in one building and a bit in another building. And there is a kind of elsewhere at home. You can see your own home in the other side of the garden. So in fact, in this way, everyone already lives in the whole block. So what you see here is the 10 strips of the building. And in fact, they are divided in 5 couples here of building, 5 couples like that, with the dwellings that are living mainly in one building, and secondly, in the other side of the garden, of the private garden. And between the couples, you see other, there are public spaces. The 2 ones here are public spaces, which allows the block to be crossed by the little houses, the inhabitants of the little houses, when they want to go to the public park. So the block is porous. And between other couples here in blue, what you see, we placed common garden here. So this garden connects people, the same story in fact, because they connect 4 neighborhoods that don't go at home by the same way. You see here, if I live here, I enter home by this way. If I live here, I enter by this way, and the same here. But they've got a common garden here to share moments together. So these are the private garden, the public streets, and the common garden. So, you know, the common garden connect neighbors who might never have met before because they don't take the same route I explained. So from one neighbor to another one, everybody is connected. So what we think at the first time that is something very divided, in fact, there are only connection. So this is a story, but you can see that we are sharing. If we live here and here, we are sharing this. We are neighbor like this, and neighbors and neighbors. So here is Sunday. It's a birthday. So here is a public space. And the little passage to go through the project. So this brings me to the last topic, because you know when a building is finished and that when the inhabitants arrive a few years later, because I don't meet them before, we go back to the sites and we meet the inhabitants. So when the operation, sometimes we are making some drawings to know how they did use the project. And in fact, sometimes we are disappointed and sometimes we are delighted, but each project is in fact that we visit is in fact a sort of opportunity to learn from what we do, and each project with we learn for the other project. So, for example, the equal rooms are sometimes rooms for 2 children because they have decided to use the other room for make a sort of playground, and they try to share the spaces, so that's fun. So I think I won't show you because, oh yes, yeah, okay. I will show you this project that is in Paris, but where we've made a sort of research, because we proposed a sort of modular wooden structure which must be able to accommodate inhabitants who will design their housing with us. It's a sort of participatory project, and the project is a kind of a toolbox that offers a multitude of possible interpretations. And of course, we propose to work with the square rooms again, but what you see here is that we used a sort of pyramid of 11 types. We think that, in fact, you know, you always get the type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, and that's all. So we think that it corresponds to the old family model, and so it's we have to upset. And we propose this sort of new grammar and closer to our society with 11 levels. And during the competition, we played a sort of a game because we're imagining maximum numbers of dwellings to show to our clients what we can do with this toolbox. And we arrived, I think it's 132 tests. And we struggled just because we have to give the project back. And so here is a sort of a music score from the bigger to the smaller dwelling. So it was a sort of exercise, and we called it OUAPO. It's sort of acronym for a French expression, ouvroir d'habitat potentiel, which refers to the Oulipo movement. You probably know Raymond Queneau. He was a member of the Oulipo movement, and he proposed an incredible and very nice book in which each reader could compose the poem of his choice from the verses that he had written before. And in fact, it's funny because some compositions are stupid and other nice discovering. So with this exercise, we prepared, in fact, ourselves from the possible combinations to work with the future inhabitants. And what you see here is the 100,000 billion poems by Raymond Queneau, with the same system that you can compose your own poem with the verses of Queneau and choose your own one. Just to conclude, and by way of comparisons, all of these projects have comparable densities from 110 to 119 dwellings per hectare that are quite high urban densities, but each one develops a very different quality of intimacy, of sharing, but also very different forms. And I mean that we can think and make the dense city from its smallest scale, from its domestic dimension, like I tried to explain to you tonight. And in fact, we can propose a large panel of way of life of depending on of the context. Sorry, it's a sort of a point of view on the city, which be a view from the inside, like a sort of a domestic city. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you when the microphone, by the microphone.
No, I have to go here. No, right now, or no, I have to go here. I have to go here.
Yes.
Hi.
I can hear your voice, but not the microphone.
Yeah, good. Thank you for a very nice lecture and a very interesting way of, let's say, structuring your work. We have a few questions as I look at myself, which is weird. This can come to.
I'm sorry. Hello? Hello.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, perfect like that. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much. And I think it was very clear that you guide us through the process of your, or the process we're designed through this very specific lens of spatial arrangement is how I understood it. And I have a question about, in terms of how you relate this idea of this spatial arrangement to the materiality of the actual, let's say, public space and community space that's being built. Because, for example, I remember one of the community space has very bright yellow. And I wonder, like, what's the relationship to that color or that materiality that's forming this space with this spatial concept?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. In fact, I didn't talk about this, but all of those projects are social projects, so we don't have any means to do anything else but standard systems. So I always try to make things different and to put in the project something that was not imagined by our client. So, for example, the yellow stair, the big stair in the building, is more expensive to build than dwellings, because you have problems of the rain in it, of the coldness, etc. So, in fact, sometimes I try to work with a sort of economy of means, and the color is a nice way to make this space very simple, with just the same color with very cheap materials, because we don't have any money for this. So it's just the all faces are like this. And this is yellow because it's like the sun, in fact, because it's in Lille and it's a rainy land. So it's a nice way to make the sun enter in the building. So that's it.
So in a way that this yellow kind of, because it helps bring the sunlight in, that it creates this brighter community space to enhance the spatial unity, I would say, of this.
Yes, absolutely. It's a sort of, we don't have any decoration, nothing, because it's very simple, but we have the decoration, in fact, of the building is that common space that is that can be lived by all the inhabitants. That in fact there are a lot of children that play in this space, and in the morning some parents are bringing the children of the neighbors, and they are going to the school together. So it's a way to connect the people, and the beauty of the building is at this place, in fact, for them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sophie. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question about the idea of adaptable spaces. In several of the examples, because of the toolkit you presented, and specifically, I guess, the last one with the that collection of different kind of possibilities, I'm interested in the way you design this sort of idea of an adaptable space, because it's not something that is completely blank and left to interpretation, saying that you know, people will use it how they want, so I shouldn't design anything. But at the same time, I can see that there's a certain sensibility where you're not over designing it either, kind of restricting the very specific possibility of use of that space. So essentially, how do you find that kind of middle ground of specificity in space, all the while understanding that the space will change over time and allowing that change to happen?
Thank you. It's a great question, because in each project, I always try to find the point where we have to stop, the point where we have to continue. And it's always a real question about our investment in the project. I think it's the big question for the architect when you are working on intimate spaces, when you're working for housing design. So I don't have what I think today is changing by the projects. I try to find different ways to respond answer to this question. But I think that what is important is to go out, I don't know, to stop with the functional system of designing the housing, because it means that when you're an inhabitant, you enter in your new apartment and you know that you will sleep here and you will meet your family here, and you do this there and do this, and in fact it's the architect that decided for you. And so I try to make the space defined by a sort of spatial quality. For example, the windows are very important, they can be different. So they are defined by spatial quality and not by a function. And also the quality can be a special one, but it can be the link with the other rooms, for example. So sometimes you get two equal rooms with the same window, but the place they have in the dwelling means that here you are more autonomous and here you are more linked to the others. So it can make some difference for some ways of life, for example, of some types of households. So I try to offer other qualities, and it depends on the project, but actually it's by this way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for your sharing, and I find it quite interesting that I want to follow.
Excuse me, is it possible just to talk with your own voice to me because the microphone is, yeah, thank you.
You need to talk into the camera.
Okay.
Difficult.
I just wondering, you have made many design, I mean, the matrix of possibility, and I was wondering, do you consider your design method as an open building system, or do you have some kind of influence by the open design, open building method? And also very curious about all these communal space. They were made for the resident, but after they have used the space, and how to maintain it, and who will manage all this communal space? Thank you.
Thank you. It's social housing, so the client keep the building and it can manage it. So it's a sort of chance because it's not private building where the clients disappear when the building is finished. And so because it's social housing, I can propose those collective spaces, in fact, because I know that they will be there. And it's something that is that I work with them. You know, in France, the managers are organized in two parts. The people who are occupied by building the projects with the architect, etc. And another part is the people who are in relationship with the inhabitants and to resolve their problem, for example. So sometimes they are working in two buildings, absolutely different. They don't know each other. So when I began a project with a social housing, I asked them to meet for the project and to work with our office together, because we can't, architecture can't do everything. We have to discuss with them the way they will use it, the way they will present it to the future inhabitants, etc. So, for example, for Machu Picchu, you know, the yellow stair, they have created a post. I don't know how they create a post for a new person who manage the way the inhabitants can meet together and write together a sort of chart for the uses of the common spaces. So this is not the client who writes, it's you can't do this, you can do this, etc. These are the inhabitants that write this chart, this common chart. So they decide what they can do or not in this space and what they can do together, and they get a calendar, a common calendar, etc. And I know that in Machu Picchu, the yellow one, the inhabitants created an association to use the spaces, for example. So what is nice is that the projects create sort of new relationships in the organization of our clients, and new things and new relationships for the inhabitants too. So the people that the post that they created for this building, now the man it's finished because the association of the inhabitants has begun to manage the building. So the guy has proposed to be occupied by another building. So now the client is writing in the program, you can put collective spaces in your future building to the architect, because we have someone that can manage this with inhabitants at the beginning, and we hope that the inhabitants will be autonomous and independent at the end. And that's what happened in.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for the lovely talk. So a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.